So we're getting back into Newsela. That is another of the old new things this week. We did quite a bit of it earlier in the year, but have not gone to it in a long time. But now things are different. We're coming back to Newsela. And so today you have this assigned reading from World History. It's titled Atlantic Crossings During the Age of Exploration. I'm going to read it to you if you'd like to stick around. You can read along with me. All right. You don't have to read it yourself if you don't want to. But then, whether you read it with me or not, you are going to take the quiz thoughtfully, slowly, and carefully. Okay? And I will, even when I'm done reading, read aloud the 4 questions to get you started. All right. So, you can pause this video now if you'd like to read it on your own. Otherwise, let's read this article together. It's not very long. It should only take about 6 or 7 minutes. This is Atlantic Crossings During the Age of Exploration. You see here what looks like a very old illustration. And the caption says, the engraving of Ark Royal, an English galleon, originally ordered for Sir Walter Raleigh and later purchased by the Crown, which is the King and Queen, for service in the Tudor Navy. Tudor was the royalty of the time in England. The vessel was 100 feet long on the keel, had a beam of 37 feet, and carried 44 guns. It was used as the English flagship in a number of engagements. That's kind of like battles, including the battles that resulted in the defeat of the Spanish Armada. That's the fleet of ships that they battled with, and had a career spanning more than 50 years. Oh, so that's a very famous boat, apparently. Okay. This article came from the National Park Service. Okay, here we go. Paragraph 1, introduction. For centuries, Europeans explored the world by sea. They had few maps and their navigating equipment was poor. Progress was slow. Can't do that. I'm going to flip the page. Irish monks explored and lived on several North Atlantic islands in the 500s. The Vikings settled in Iceland in the 800s, Greenland in the 900s, and North America in the 1000s. In the 1200s, European traders reached the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa. In the 1300s, seamen from Genoa in Italy landed in the Madeiras and began regular routes between Italy and the Baltic. So that's an introduction to how, for centuries, Europeans had explored the world by sea. Those centuries from the 500s all the way through the 800s, 9s, 12s, 1200s, and 1300s, okay? So that's how the world had been explored by sea. Now we pick things up here. The first section, called The Evolution of Sailing Ships. The most important thing was a reliable boat. From the beginning, European trading ships were small and clumsy. Still, they were generally sturdy enough to sail the open seas. By the 900s, sails improved. Ships became easier to steer. Around 1000, Europeans began using magnetic compass. By 1200, mariners in the Mediterranean had simple navigational charts. Ships became larger and better built, which let them go farther and longer. At first, they had to become bigger in order to carry guns. Then they grew to carry goods for trade and food needed for long voyages. Beginning around 1400, Spain conquered the Canary Islands and killed the people there. In 1418, Prince Henry the Navigator of Portugal began sending expeditions farther and farther down the west coast of Africa. We learned about him, didn't we, in the book we read together and in our textbook. By 1450 or so, the Portuguese reached Guinea in Africa and began settling on the Cape Verde Islands. In the 1480s, Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias rounded the Cape of Good Hope in Africa. We read about that in our textbook too. In 1492, Christopher Columbus arrived in the New World. We read about that in the book about Christopher Columbus. And in 1498, Portuguese Vasco da Gama sailed around Africa to India. We learned about him in our textbook as well. A lot of connections here. The next section, Spain was once ruler of the seas. So what do we expect this section to be about? Yes, I hope you said Spain. In the early 1600s, ocean travel was flourishing. Spain was stealing the immense wealth of the New World. Portugal traded with India, the Spice Islands, and its New World colony, Brazil. Spain became ruler of the seas. Large groups of Spanish ships regularly crossed the Atlantic. They carried gold, silver, jewels, cacao, which is chocolate before it becomes chocolate, tobacco, and other valuable commodities back to Spain. Commodities are things that can be sold. Other European countries were jealous of Spain. England decided to compete for a piece of the New World. However, England had few mariners with experience sailing in open water and little knowledge of the Atlantic or the Western Hemisphere. The Western Hemisphere is the hemisphere that North America and South America are in. You are in the Western Hemisphere right now. Even worse, the English government did not want to pay for it. This last section, is called England Raises the Navigational Bar. What do you think this section is going to be about? I hope you said England. Yes. The English decided to become better at ocean travel. English mariners were very good at sailing along the coast. However, they had little experience with the open ocean. They determined to improve. They hired Spanish pilots and navigators to teach them. They wrote books on piloting and navigation. They also invented new navigational instruments and charts and built ships that could sail across the ocean. An interest in overseas trade and expansion began to flourish. That means grow. The British set sail to explore the New World in 1584. By that time, Englishmen had already circled the globe and explored the Arctic. By the last half of the 1500s, English ships were crisscrossing the Atlantic. They became more skilled at navigating, and they had better ships. Now think about that. Remember, the first colony in America isn't until 1607, right? In Jamestown. 1621 is the second colony of the Pilgrims in Massachusetts. This is the last half of the 1500s. This is 50 years before any of those settlements. The English raised the art of navigation to a science. A new age of discovery, exploration, and expansion was about to begin. It would change the world and how people understood it. Okay, that's the text. Go back and reread with me again if you'd like. But you need to do the quiz thoughtfully and carefully. So here is the first question. It says, read the selection from the first paragraph of the article. This is the selection right here. Okay, so I'll read it to you now. Let's read it again, right? And it says it's from the first paragraph of the article. So the first paragraph of the article is here. If I needed to go back, I could see it right here. It says, for centuries, Europeans explored the world by sea. Oh, right here, it's the first line. They had few maps and their navigating equipment was poor. Look at, there it is. Few maps and their navigating equipment was poor. Progress was slow. Progress was slow. There it is. The question is right here. Which sentence uses the word poor in the same way as it's used above? So what that means is you're going to have some selections here, some choices. I'm not going to show them all to you because it gives away answers. But trust me, they're here. Like this A says many people were poor and had little money during the Great Depression. You have to think about how poor, the word poor, is being used in that sentence. And is it the same way that the word poor is being used up here in this sentence? They had few maps and their navigating equipment was poor. Well, let's think about how it's being used in this sentence. It's being used to say what? To say that they didn't have much money? I don't think so. They had few maps and their navigating equipment was poor. That version of poor means it wasn't good, it wasn't quality, it wasn't effective. It didn't work well. So in this example here, back to A for a second. In this sentence, does poor mean not work well? Well, let's find out. Many people were poor and had little money during the Great Depression. Well, they're talking about how they didn't have much money. That's not the same thing as not working well or being ineffective, right? So I don't think it's A. That's the kind of thinking, slow and careful, that you're going to do as you consider these questions, okay? So the next question, question 2, is read the selection from the section, The Evolution of Sailing Ships. That's this section here, right here, The Evolution of Sailing Ships. And here's the section I want you to really pay attention to, okay? I'll read it to you. The most important thing was a reliable boat. From the beginning, European trading ships were small and clumsy. Oh, look at that. I just noticed this is the first sentences from this section too. Okay, back to it. Still, they were generally sturdy enough to sail the open seas. By the 900s, sails improved and ships became easier to steer. This question says, what is the meaning of the word reliable as it is used in the selection above? You're going to be given choices for definitions. What does reliable mean in this section? The most important thing was a reliable boat. That's what you have to think about. It's back up here too. Reliable boat. See it up here? Yes. Good. The next question says, read the section, The Evolution of Sailing Ships. That means read the whole section. Okay, we'll look at that in a second. The question you'll answer is, which sentence from the section shows that explorers sometimes acted violently when they arrived in new places? Which sentence? You're looking for a sentence in this case. Okay. This is the section here, The Evolution of Sailing Ships. So what sentence from these two paragraphs? You got to pick one sentence that answers the question. Okay. All right, you have one more question, but I can't show it because I just looked ahead and it's going to give away answers. So I'm going to leave you here. All right. Go back, read with me again if you need to. Take your time with the quiz. We're going to be doing Newsela every day. So let's take it serious. Let's get good at it. Let's work hard and let me know if you have questions. I'm here to help. All right. Don't forget to hit submit, turn in when you're done so I can see the results of your quiz. Thank you, and let me know if you need anything.